At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Ranked #1 in innovation for 10 consecutive years and #2 among public universities for employability, ASU isn't just ahead of the curve, it's creating new paths to success. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online, that's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
Welcome to Make It Rain with Adam Schein on VSiN, the sports betting network.
Yes, Tuesday edition of Make It Rain with Adam Schein here on VSiN. And my goodness, we've got an unbelievable, outstanding show for you today. We have a lot of baseball plays, a lot to get into for tonight, a lot to review, big picture from last night. I love watching baseball, betting on baseball, chopping it up on baseball. So we've got a lot to do on Major League Baseball today. We'll get into the brutal start for the Braves. We'll get into the brutal start for Rafael Devers, get into the genius of the Dodgers and the genius of the Padres. A lot of NBA today. We will get into the Lakers. We'll get into OKC. We'll get into the Boston Celtics, get into the slate tonight. We have a lot of interesting plays and some good NFL things you can bet on based upon some news you could use and news notes, nuggets, and nightly plays. The Z Train, our guy Zach Cohen, is going to join us to chop it up on some hoops. Ton on the Final Four with Zach coming up in 30 minutes. We're looking forward to that. Let's start with some of our biggest topics and hottest takes here on a Tuesday. And how about the Atlanta Braves? My goodness. Brutal. Absolutely brutal. Sometimes it rains and it pours. I mean, you want to talk about a terrible start to the season. How about the Atlanta Braves, right? Where the Atlanta Braves are now 0-5 on the Young campaign. And listen, it is April 1st, and it's 162 games, and it's a marathon. But they go to San Diego, a team that I think is going to be playoff bound. And the Braves lose all 4 games and score 7 runs in 4 games. Absolutely anemic. They get destroyed 6-1 by the Dodgers last night, and Tyler Glasnow absolutely just took it to him. I mean, cruise control for Glasnow, who is majestic, and the Braves look like they were swinging a wet noodle at the plate. Jurickson Profar, who they signed as a winning ball player, outfield replacement. Acuna Jr. is not healthy. He gets popped for PEDs. I mean, what are you guys doing? You can't take performance-enhancing drugs with the new testing policy and the new penalties, and now it's an 80-game suspension, and he can't play in the postseason. Plus, they place Ronaldo Lopez, key pitcher, on the injured list with a shoulder. Acuna Jr. still hasn't played. Strider hasn't pitched. And, Max Fried's not walking through that door. And I want to stress it's early, right? And Vegas knows when you take a look at the odds. And I picked Atlanta to make the playoffs. And I'm not backing off on that. Still, that's where they're at right now in terms of, look at that, minus 290 to make the playoffs. And I would never encourage you to take a bet and say, okay, miss the playoffs at plus 235. I thought the Braves going into the season were going to be eventually the second or third best team in the National League. And I still think that way, but it looks awful. And the schedule makers did them no favorites, opening up on that West Coast swing with San Diego and then Los Angeles. So chances are, conventional wisdom, they're not going to win a baseball game until ultimately we start talking about, at the end of the day, this weekend. I mean, I don't think they're taking one in L.A. They didn't take one against the Padres, so what a total top-to-bottom mess, a disaster. This is pure hell. Again, I want to stress this, right? The Atlanta Braves are not dead, but right now, David Cohen told a great story when he was doing the ESPN Sunday night game on Sunday with the Braves and the Padres. Remember, Cohen was pitching for the 98 Yankees. Ended up being one of the best teams in baseball history. They started out 0-3, 1-4, whatever benchmark you want to use. And it's crazy to think back, but there were reports, they're going to fire Joe Torre, bring in Davey Johnson. But they had the leaders in the clubhouse to make sure that they held everyone accountable and said, guys, there are going to be household changes if we don't ultimately play up to the stats on the back of our bubblegum card. So I think that, the Braves need to, Olsen needs to hit. They need to get the leadership back. They need to stop pressing. They're clearly swinging out of their shoes. Not giving up on the Atlanta Braves, but if you had bets on them starting off the season in a strong fashion, that is no good. Speaking of no good, what the hell is going on with the Boston Red Sox and Rafael Devers? And I expected the Braves to be a little sluggish out of the gate, but Boston, I want you to take a look at this. Our incredible producer, the great Michael Cohen, unearthed these odds and the odds movement for Rafael Devers for AL MVP. And sometimes numbers and odds can lie. Sometimes they tell you all you need to know. Look at where they were for Devers, right, on opening day. And you figured he was going to be the best player on a team that I thought was going to end up winning the American League East. So this checks out in terms of AL MVP odds. I would have put Devers in my top 5. Today, the odds have dropped to 80-1. They go from 25-1 to 80-1, not even a week of baseball. Why? Devers' stats. He is 0 for 19 with 15 strikeouts. And this is officially now a thing. Because clearly it's mental, and we spend so much time saying, of course, sign Alex Bregman. He'll play third base, and, you got to make sure if you're Alex Cora, not only a brilliant manager, but specifically a brilliant manager when it comes to dealing with his players and the clubhouse and making sure that everyone's in the right frame of mind. So I figured, clearly, erroneously and wrongly so, that Devers would be on board with anything and everything. We're at a stage right now, one of the best hitters in baseball is broken. It's clearly between the ears. It's clearly because he's not on board with being a full-time DH, not on board with the fact that he's not playing third base. We're now at a stage, and Boston's off today. If Devers is the DH, and he will be tomorrow, and doesn't get a hit, if I'm Alex Cora, I got to think about putting him back at third base. If you lose Rafael Devers, you're going to lose baseball games. I mean, that American League East, even when I picked them to win the division, the Yankees, the Orioles, the Jays, the Rays, all had legit, over-unders for the upcoming season, right? I mean, all were expected to be in contention. Vegas favored the New York Yankees, who are off to obviously a blistering start. It's one thing at the end of the day if you hit a couple atom balls and you're scuffling and, you start the season 3 for 20, you believe that Rafael Devers is going to hit. But because so much was made of where he was going to be mentally with the position change, and not all hitters are geared for a change of position, and it's creature of habit, but a lot of batters will talk about the mind games that come with DHing and they don't feel engaged. So I don't like to panic, and Boston's 1-4, right? They lost yesterday to Baltimore. They got clubbed, and, obviously they lost 3 out of 4 in Texas. But I think with Devers, if he has another game tomorrow night where it's not only over, it's awful at bats and 0 contact, 15 strikeouts and 19 ABs, I spent a lot of money on him in my fantasy league after we won the league last year, but I digress. My goodness, this is a disaster. I think if you're Alex Cora, you have to take all sorts of measures into account. Garrett Crochet and the Red Sox did, in fact, agree to a 6-year contract, $170 million. Listen, this is going to put pressure, obviously, here on Garrett Crochet, and I think that he'll be up to it. He'll be ready for it. If there is risk attached, obviously, you make that trade, and obviously, Crochet has never pitched for a winning team, never pitched with a team with a real following in a big market. I know Chicago is in Chicago, Illinois with the White Sox, but nobody gives a damn about the White Sox like playing in Siberia. Pitching for the Red Sox, everything will be magnified. Just something to monitor here as the Red Sox scuffle out of the gate. I thought the LA Lakers had their biggest win of the season last night. You could argue that Saturday night in Denver after the Luka trade, but considering how they torpedoed after the trade, then how they fell apart with the injury after LeBron got hurt, then when LeBron got back and they were losing to inferior teams, the necessity to A, avoid the play-in, B, get a top 4 seed so you have home court in the playoffs. I thought this was the biggest win of the year, and they thumped Houston. This was a comfortable win, and this was excellent. And the Lakers' defense had been scuffling, and they did a great job. And LeBron under 20 last night. Again, that to me was noteworthy. You saw Vincent make threes, and Finney-Smith was excellent on offense, not to mention, obviously, Luka Doncic. So take a look at the Western Conference standings and odds, and you see the Lakers in 4th place, and they've got the 4th best odds to win the conference, 5th best odds to win the conference. Golden State is down below in terms of the standings, but does have better odds to win the conference, and that's the Steph and Kerr and Draymond factor, and I could wrap my brain around that. But the goal for the Lakers is to stay no lower than that 4 line. And I think they're now in position. And listen, the season ends in a week and a half. So you had to secure a game like that. I don't view the Rockets as a threat in the West. You know, I think they've played great regular season ball. I don't think they have a prayer of being a great team in the postseason. So I thought that was a monster deal by the Lakers last night. How about the Thunder and the Celtics? They closed March in such a major way. Hey, listen, this could easily be, when it's all said and done, you know, obviously the teams that meet each other in the NBA Finals. The Thunder are able to win last night, and they are on a 10-game winning streak, and that's absolutely incredible. And you take a look at what they were able to accomplish in the month of March. How about the Thunder going 15-1? They've won 10 straight. Celtics 14-1, and they have won 9 straight. And, you know, first 6-0 road trip for the Celtics in franchise history, considering their franchise. That's pretty remarkable history. Take a look at the NBA championship odds. It's absolutely incredible. And I do expect here that the Thunder are going to win it all. Still think the Cavs are going to have a say in this entire thing. But you got to acknowledge, no one's playing better than Boston in the East.
Watching Make It Rain on VSiN, the sports betting network.
If you're betting on baseball, make sure you're getting the best odds with Profit X. Profit X is the first peer-to-peer sports exchange in the United States, available in 40-plus states. That means you're betting against other fans, not the sports books, giving you, on average, 10 to 20% better odds. You can even request your own odds. Download Profit X today and use the code VSiN. Welcome back, Make It Rain with Adam Schein. And how about the LA Dodgers? My goodness. They're 6-0 of the season, 162-0. I keep joking that it's still within range and it's still possible. And what do you know? It is. We're only joking by just a little bit. And Tyler Glasnow was absolutely majestic. And, you know, that's kind of a big deal considering how amazing he was when the Dodgers got him from the Tampa Rays. And then, obviously, the injury and couldn't pitch down the stretch. It couldn't pitch in the playoffs. And that was obviously so disappointing and so frustrating. And now you take a look at it, and, you know, he's back and he's healthy, and Yamamoto's healthy, and Sasaki, even though he got rocked on Friday, he's still here, and it's just an amazing rotation and an embarrassment of riches. And, you know, Shohei Ohtani scored a run in every single game. Teoscar Hernandez hit another bomb, and he's so tough, and he's so clutch, and, you know, he was so instrumental, and this is why Dave Roberts, our outstanding skipper, said, yeah, we absolutely, at the end of the day, need to make sure that we re-sign him. And that's what he said when he joined us on my SiriusXM radio show. So I am a big believer here that the Dodgers, when you look at their odds, it's all still in play, and it's all still the right bet and the only bet. And, you know, we got the Dodgers to win the World Series plus 390, and, you know, we saw it at plus 290 before the season. And listen, I don't know how you bet against them. I mean, they can withstand injury. They have so much depth. You look at Tommy Edman and Michael Conforto and what they brought to the table in the ball game and in the victory last night. That's ridiculously impressive, and it's crazy. So I love watching this team play. I love watching the fight. I love watching the gobs of talent. I love watching what Dave Roberts does to structure it. Love everything about the ability here for the LA Dodgers to go out and kick ass and take names. Have a day, Ellie De La Cruz. Are you kidding me? A 2-home run game, 7 RBI, 11 total bases, 4 runs scored, and he is my pick to win the National League MVP. Love Ellie, love the Reds, love Terry Francona, love the ability for the Reds to make the playoffs and win the division. I am a big believer when you take a look at this squad that they are ultimately going to be able to get it done. And Cincinnati to win the division, we got it at what, plus 850 before the season, plus 600, plus 280 to make the playoffs. And I don't think this team is perfect. Getting McClain back and having him play second and bat second is huge. But clearly Cincinnati is loaded. Clearly Cincinnati is fun. They got a great pitching performance last night. Hunter Green is going to go tomorrow afternoon, so that'll be fun. And how about Ellie De La Cruz using the torpedo bat? Oh, it's not just the Yankees. How about it? How great is that? Listen, I think Ellie De La Cruz is a superb special ball player. Love his energy. Love the way he goes opposite field, spraying line drives in addition to the power. The entire thing, when you watch Ellie De La Cruz, is just remarkable, and I'm impressed. I'm obsessed. I can't get enough, and watching him do his thing and get the celebration and the jubilation and the attention that he richly deserves. Listen, I didn't like the Brewers before the season. Cubs murdered the Sacramento A's last night, and that's a whole nother story, which we'll get to for a whole nother day. But I do think that Cincinnati will be able to ultimately win this division. And, the Brewers can't blame the torpedo bats anymore, right? Can't do that. Can't blame the old torpedo bats. I mean, Kansas City wasn't using them. You got all these pitchers from Milwaukee, cry me a damn river. Oh, the Yankees, they're cheating, shouldn't be legal. Yeah? He got destroyed 11-1. The Royals ruined the home opener. I mean, my goodness, that is terrible. The Milwaukee Brewers have now allowed 47 total runs in their first 4 games. Embarrassing, amateur hour, terrible, unacceptable. I want to stress, it's early. Pat Murphy did an unbelievable job at that baseball team last year. But that's why I always stress the manager when I give the Brewers their flowers. I don't think the roster's that great. They lost a couple of key position players. They lost their closer, got rid of him in the offseason. So when I look at the Brewers and their odds, I don't think they're going to make the playoffs, and Vegas clearly agrees. And then you compare and contrast it when you look at my Kansas City Royals. And look, I think the Royals are winning the division. I think the Royals are going to make the playoffs. So you look at their division odds, plus 220. I think Vegas is starting to catch on here, starting to understand that obviously this is a team that has the ability to go out and get it done. So I'm obsessed, I'm impressed, I'm in love, and I think that Kansas City is going to absolutely have the ability to slug its way and pitch its way to the postseason behind a monster campaign from our guy, Bobby Witt Jr. Should we be acknowledging the Chicago White Sox? I mean, I guess you might as well stress the positive while you can. First of all, I told you the Twins were going to be hot garbage this year. The Twins are now 0-4 in the season. And it's one thing when you lose and, it's competitive, low-scoring games against the Cardinals. To lose to the Chicago White Sox 9-0. I mean, that's like full of the franchise material. That's like, get out of the baseball business and sell ice cream, sell bicycles, open a balloon shop. I mean, that's just some bad baseball, some bad mojo, some bad juju here when you look at it from a Twins standpoint. Minnesota, to me, to miss the playoffs, and Vegas The odds have already moved. The money's moving. The lines are moving. I think people realize Minnesota cannot be taken seriously. Minus 150 to miss the playoffs for the Minnesota Twins. So that's where we're at right now when it comes to Minnesota Twins baseball. And listen, we'll give the White Sox their due. Otherwise, this is an irrelevant franchise, a terrible team, impossible to take them seriously. But congrats on the unembarrassing start. And, they'll always have the 9-0 March 31st victory over the Minnesota Twins. The Sacramento A's are an embarrassment, and it's just a disgrace. I'm actually happy that they got destroyed, murdered, absolutely killed, rocked, cooked, whatever adjective and verb you want to use in describing it. This team is a mess. 18-3, the Cubs are able to beat the A's, and I think John Fisher's the worst. And the fact that he moved this team out of Oakland, he sabotaged the whole thing, Major League Cleveland Indians style, where he wouldn't spend any money. And so this way the fans didn't come to the park. And don't misinterpret, the Oakland Coliseum is a dump, right? I'm not going to pretend that it's not. But that scene in Sacramento last night where, the A's are doing media availabilities in a trailer and, in a tool shed, and you have, chairs lined up in the outfield and people sitting in chairs like it's me at my, son's Little League game or my daughter's softball game. It's amateur hour. The whole thing is dreadful. So I'm embarrassed for baseball. I'm embarrassed for the A's. They should have forced John Fisher to sell. He didn't act in good faith in Oakland. Vegas doesn't want these guys. I mean, Vegas wants to have their own team. They want basically everything that happened with the Golden Knights, right? They don't want a cheap-ass John Fisher A's team that is going to have no buzz. And it's not like this is just a one-year wonder. It's two. And there are smart people in Vegas who don't think that the A's are ever going to move to Las Vegas for all the reasons we documented. So this is an embarrassment that they're playing in minor league Sacramento at a minor league stadium for 2 years. What a disgrace. And meanwhile, the fans from age 8 to 80 in Oakland, they lost their team forever. That is a joke. I told you that the Mets run line was going to cash last night. Well, best bet was able to cash, baby. We did it. I told you that the Mets would beat the Marlins and win by a couple of runs or more. That was a great best bet. We've been on fire with our bets in the month of March. I mean, we'll see now that it's April. Now it's April Fool's Day. See if we're able to keep the hot month going here on Make It Rain with Adam Schein. And listen, Pete Alonso taking care of business, hit that grand slam. I was watching a ton of this game. It's easy to sit back and enjoy watching the Mets. Obviously in a fun team to watch, and most especially they have the best broadcast crew and in baseball with Gary, Keith, and Ron, and that's always fun. The Mets obviously scuffled in Houston. They're better than Miami. Miami had the walk-offs against Pittsburgh. I think so much of that was because of Pittsburgh. So at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, I think the Mets will.
Watching Make It Rain on VSiN, the sports betting network.
The tournament may be winding down, but the betting action never stops. Major League Baseball is back. NBA, NHL playoffs around the corner. PGA and, of course, the NFL Draft, the Masters, just weeks away. Stay ahead of every opportunity with a VSiN Pro subscription for just $9.99 and get daily best bets from VSiN hosts and guests, exclusive betting splits from DraftKings and Circa, 24/7 video access on the VSiN Watch app, plus our MLB season betting guide and upcoming Kentucky Derby betting guide. That's pretty amazing. No matter what the sport, VSiN Pro has you covered. Sign them now at VSiN.com/subscribe. It's just for $9.99. They're practically giving it away. VSIN.com/subscribe. Welcome back, Make It Rain with Adam Schein. Joining us right now live on the Progressive Guest Line. You know him, you love him, you can't live without him. He is a brilliant and genius sports gambler and betting analyst and writer at VSiN.com. My guy, the great Zach Cohen. Z-Train, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing great. I appreciate you asking, Z-Train. You're always just a mensch. I mean, you're incredible. Always ask how I'm doing. And I'm curious to know, seriously, when you look at this past weekend in the Elite Eights, and 3 of the games were not super competitive, 1 was a thrilling comeback. I'm curious what you hit on, what you missed on, what surprised you, if anything, from this weekend in college hoops.
I lost on that Michigan State game. I thought they were going to be able to keep that a little bit closer than they did. I was a little bit nervous about the way that they play offense. I kind of wrote that all year long. You know, the Spartans have been, a below average offensive team all year, as good as they have been defensively. I thought that they'd be able to figure it out late in the season. That ended up dooming them in the end. And I thought, it was surprising to kind of see, Broom get injured, come back in and just kind of take back over, even though it looked like his right arm was really just kind of hanging by the side there. So that was interesting. I was shocked to see Florida find a way to steal that game from Texas Tech. I think that the Gators have been, on the right side of 2 games where, they probably were outplayed, where I thought UConn had them beat. I thought Texas Tech had them beat. Now I'm a little bit nervous about Florida moving forward. The other games, I think were a little bit more straightforward. I really liked Houston against Tennessee. I thought that their offense would be a little bit too much. It was in the end, and I thought that Duke was just way too loaded for that Alabama team.
Excellent recap, and I do think a lot of it, it's good stuff in terms of what you nailed and what you didn't hit this past weekend. But also, I'm trying to go into your mind and what you're going to learn from, and it's interesting, because of the way Florida played against UConn. I still thought down 9 3 minutes ago Florida was going to win. Because if you could do that to a Dan Hurley coach team in the tournament, you could find a way to survive and advance. I mean, we saw him in the SEC, saw him in the SEC tournament. I'm always honest with you and the audience. I thought they would find a way to still get that win. 2 schools of thought on that moving forward. I had their coach, Todd Golden, on my SiriusXM radio show today. You could either A, say, wow, okay, Florida needs to play better going up against Auburn in the Final Four, or they understand how tough and clutch they need to be when it matters the most. We saw that starting with the Auburn regular season win in early February. We saw that down the stretch, saw it in the SEC tournament, and now in the NCAAs. Moving it forward, Z, how do you spin that and how it relates to betting Auburn and Florida?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot to the point that, they've found a way to win close games, and that's something that they're going to need to do in order to win the title. Having said that, I just think that I'd rather have the plus money odds on Auburn in a game that I kind of do think is a bit of a coin flip. I think that these are 2 great teams. Obviously, it wouldn't shock me if Florida won. I love the way that team is built. I think in terms, of just roster distribution, they have a little bit of everything. I love the big guys that they have on that team. That's something that I really do think is a huge strength for them. And then Walter Clayton Jr. is just such a clutch player at the guard position, makes big shots. But I do think Auburn, if Broom is healthy, I'm not sure that's going to be the case. That's a huge if. Like I said, I thought he was dangling his arm towards the end of that game against Michigan State. But I do think if he's healthy, that gives them a big edge, just having the most dominant big on the floor, having guys that can shoot around him. I think that Auburn would get the job done in the second meeting between these teams. So I would take the plus money odds. I wouldn't say it's something that I'm really confident in, but I do think that that's the right way to go here.
That's an interesting one. And listen, I think that, I'm with you on Broom, and we had Bruce Pearl on our SiriusXM radio show yesterday, and he was concerned enough that, he was going for another MRI. I think that his arm would have to be off his body and not attached for him not to play, but, obviously he's a special ball player. I like Florida still. I'm going to roll with Florida, and again, we've had both coaches on the show. I'll tell you, this Houston-Duke game, Duke to me, and Houston looked great, right? And I know Tennessee was inept, and so much of that was self-served and, they're self-induced. A lot of that was because of how long and how strong Houston was on defense. I think Duke is like UConn from last year. They're not only winning, they're destroying teams. They're covering the spread. I know Arizona had that late cover. Love played great. Z-Train, I love Duke. I really do. I think betting against Duke is not a wise play here. What are you looking for with Duke and Houston? The number at least gives me pause for my take. What's your feel?
I did take Houston plus 5.5, and I have a little bit on the money line. I do think that this Duke team is otherworldly, and I love John Shire. I just feel like great coaches, even the best coaches of all time, tend to take their lumps in the tournament. And I think that Shire being in his first Final Four, going against Kelvin Sampson, who I think has proven himself to be one of the best coaches in all college basketball, is going to be a factor at some point here. I also just think that Joseph Tugler, being one of the best wing defenders in all college basketball, is going to be something interesting for Cooper Flagg to deal with for the first time kind of all season. I think that he's going to be playing a player that can guard him a little bit. And I do think that Houston is good enough defensively around him to kind of ask a lot of questions of a Duke team where they are talented. They have guys that can knock down shots. I'm just not sure they have guys that can create their own shots outside of Flagg. I think that Proctor is the next best one. I think he maybe has a big game here. But I think this is a game where you might see a Con Knipple struggle a little bit just because of the perimeter defenders that Houston has. And I do think that the Cougars, they have a lot of shot creation. I know that this is a team that we view as a defensive-minded club, and I do think that, that has been the identity under Sampson in the past. It's the best offensive team he's had, though, and I do think that they have guards that can create offense with Cryer, with Uzan, and, with Sharp. I just think that that's something to keep in mind late in the game when if the defenses are the stars of this show, who's going to be able to create the offense easier? I think it might be Houston.
I love that breakdown, Z-Train. So we're going to be against each other in both these games, and, should be epic Final Four matchups. We need that after the first, few weekends. And so I'm going to go with Florida. You've got Auburn. I'm going to go Duke. You're going to go with Houston. So that'll be fun. And, everyone is going to be blowing you up on Twitter at your awful Twitter handle, which must be changed, at Betting on X. I mean, we got to get you a Zach Cohen Twitter handle. Thunder Celtics close March on fire. If you had to bet a team to win the NBA title, who you putting money down on and why?
I still would say the Cavaliers. I would still say it wouldn't be either of those two teams, only because the Cavaliers are plus 700 you see on this board. I don't think that much separates the Thunder and the Celtics and then the Cavaliers. So if you're looking for, a pick to win the title right now, that still screams, the most value to me, just because I don't see them on a completely separate tier as those other two. Between the Celtics and the Thunder, it's an interesting conversation because I do think Boston would beat Oklahoma City in a series. But having said that, I think the Celtics have a much tougher road with the Eastern Conference being, top heavy, with a team like the Cavaliers being potentially in their way. You don't really see that type of team in the Western Conference right now preventing OKC from getting to the finals. So it's a tough call. I wouldn't hate anybody taking Oklahoma City at plus money odds just because there's a very good road for them to get there. But I do think that the best value is the Cavaliers, and I think that the Celtics would beat the Thunder.
Listen, I picked the Thunder, bet on the Thunder preseason, so I'm going to stay with that. I agree with your take, though, that the best bets, quote-unquote, would be the Cavs, but I still think could end up winning the East. All right, Z-Train, what are your best Tuesday NBA plays?
I like the Spurs plus 4 against the Magic tonight. I noted in my column at VSiN.com, it's not great taking these tanking teams right now. All of them have been playing horribly. But, with tanking, it's not about the players on the floor not trying. It's about the players being available. And the Spurs do have everybody, Wembanyama and Fox, who are out for the season, are available tonight. They're playing against the Magic team that played last night, a really tough game against the Clippers. So I think it's a good spot to back San Antonio, which has been, good straight up, good against the spread at home. Orlando's a pretty, brutal, rough road team. I think this is a good spot for the Spurs. And then, I have a couple of player props up on the site if you want to go read up on those.
VSiN.com superstar, my guy, Zach Cohen.
You're watching Make It Rain on VSiN, the sports betting network.
Do you want to know where the money is really going? Unlike other sources, our betting splits come straight from Circa, DraftKings Sportsbooks, giving you insight into where the sharp action is landing. Circa is known for taking the big bets from professional bettors, while DraftKings provides a broader market perspective. That means you're getting the real action, not just the public money, but the kind of wagers that move the old lines. See the percentage of bets versus percentage of handle on every game across every major sport, helping you make smarter, more informed bets. Get VSiN's exclusive betting splits for as little as $9.99 for your first month. VSiN.com/subscribe. Welcome back, Make It Rain with Adam Schein. Time for our news, notes, nuggets, and nightly plays. And let's talk some football. And you had the coaches and the general managers from the NFC talking to the gathered news media at the owners' meetings today in Florida. And listen, there's a lot of conversation and consternation around the Giants and what they're going to do with that third overall pick. And Joe Schoen, the general manager, said, quote, "We have options when it comes to the third pick in the upcoming draft." And, you know, I love the way we asked that question, right? Should the Giants take a quarterback in the draft? The answer is absolutely yes, and they need a franchise quarterback. Now, if you dive deeper into the meaning of the question, should the Giants take a quarterback at 3 in the draft? Should they take Shedeur Sanders if available? Does it speak volumes if Cleveland, quarterback needy as well, if they pass on Shedeur Sanders? First of all, the Giants have failed the quarterback position ever since the last few years of Eli Manning's career. And this goes back to prior regimes and Dave Gettleman, and, you know, that was a mess. And, you know, then, you know, not taking a quarterback in when they took Saquon Barkley in 2018 and reaching on Daniel Jones. And then the new brass, Joe Schoen, signing Daniel Jones after the one flukish season, which you had to know was a fluke, especially when he got smacked around in the division round of the playoffs to the Philadelphia Eagles. But they somehow inexplicably gave him that contract extension anyway, which really set everything back. And then the Giants, you know, win some games they should have lost, and it cost them Jaden Daniels, and it cost them Drake May, and they beat the Colts, and it's going to cost them Cam Ward. So they're constantly clueless and or in no man's land. And listen, as an example, last year at this time, I said, sure, I love Malik Neighbors, but 6th overall pick in the draft, I would take J.J. McCarthy or Michael Penix Jr. because you need the quarterback. The issue here is, and it's confounding, how great is Shedeur Sanders? Look, I think he could be a really good to great player. Is he a better prospect than Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter? I mean, that's up for conversation. I think Carter could be Michael Parsons. I think that Travis Hunter could be Shohei Ohtani, considering what he does on offense and defense. So, and if you don't take a quarterback, where do you get the quarterback? Because Russell Wilson is cooked, and the Steelers watched him play at the end of the year, and they said, get out of town. Jameis Winston, if I ever hear another person say Jameis Winston's fun, I'm going to throw up. Maybe you have a different definition of fun, a sick and twisted fun, but, you know, throwing interceptions and throwing the ball to the wrong team, throwing pick sixes, that's not fun. Cleveland chased Jameis Winston away. So take a look at the odds here for the third overall pick. The conventional wisdom favorite for the Giants right now is Travis Hunter. Not as much smoke when it comes to the Cleveland Browns picking him at 2. Right now, Shedeur's at plus 120, Abdul Carter at plus 250. I think that putting a wager on Sanders or Hunter makes sense. I would just be so disappointed here if, in fact, the Giants passed on a quarterback again. I mean, look at the Giants' future odds, right? You know, it's up on DraftKings right now, and it's 5.5. 5.5. And if you go with the under right now, that's at minus 120 for the Giants. I mean, no one's going to take them to win the division or the championship or the Super Bowl. And, you know, if they finish in third place, I mean, they're going to throw a parade or everyone's going to get fired. His team is such a mess, a complete and utter mess. And it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. If I'm the Giants, and there's something to be said. You can take Travis Hunter and then trade back into the top 10 and take Jackson Dart, give up pick 35 in round 2 and your first-round pick next year. You're going to have to get supremely creative if you opt not to take your quarterback at 3, because the short answer obviously is yes. The detailed answer is obviously 5 minutes minimum long in trying to explain the woes and the issues here for the New York Football Giants. Jimmy Haslam yesterday at the owners' meeting called the Browns trade for Deshaun Watson a big swing and a miss. And it was, and you can make the case that it's the worst deal in the history of professional sports, certainly the NFL. 3 first-round picks to kick Baker Mayfield to the curb. Watson, terrible person, terrible player, got suspended, off injured, never available. It was the ultimate swing and a miss. And, right now in Cleveland, and has Kenny Pickett as a quarterback. Watson's not going to play for him. And they're waiting to trade for Kirk Cousins. I am fascinated to see what they do with Shedeur Sanders and if they draft him with that number 2 overall pick. A lot of smoke and conversation around, at the end of the day, Abdul Carter, and that's where Vegas is in terms of the betting favorite. Honestly, at this stage, I wouldn't even make a play on it because I think everybody, based upon the Adam Schefter reporting, expects Abdul Carter to go 2nd overall to the Cleveland Browns. So that's where we are right now with the 2nd pick in the draft, and obviously it relates very much to the Giants and their odds as well. Look at the Browns, though, for their futures, right? And again, it comes back to the quarterback position. This team made the playoffs with Joe Flacco just a year ago, the 2023 season. It's kind of crazy to stop and think about that. Frankly, at this stage, I would bet the over on the win total for the Browns, but I just want to stress this. Do not make a play on the Browns until we have knowledge on what they do at 2. Even if you got to wait, I'd rather wait here. Wait and see who the quarterback is, see what they do at 2, see if they make a move for Kirk Cousins. All that matters here. Remember, Cousins and Stefanski together in Minnesota, that all matters here when you start talking about betting the Cleveland Browns. Let's get back to baseball. Yankees host the Diamondbacks tonight as the Yankees had a day off yesterday, and Yankees right now are just on fire. Corbin Burns is going to be on the bump tonight for Arizona. Wouldn't be surprised, frankly, to see the Diamondbacks end up winning this game, but obviously all eyes are going to be on the torpedo bats, and, it's pretty great when you take a look at what they've been able to do. 36 runs they scored in the sweep, bust out the Brewers and the torpedo bats. What they did in the sweep over the Brewers. And take a look at the combined stats of the players using torpedo bats. By the way, if you haven't seen it yet, there is now a category on DraftKings where it's for players who are using the torpedo bats, and they isolate it for you, and you can bet on them to hit homers. I love sports. I love sports betting. I love homer props, and I love these torpedo bats. Grizzlies look to snap a losing streak. They host the Golden State Warriors. And, betting against the Grizz after they fired Taylor Jenkins, that's a really smart thing to do. So I think that rolling with the Warriors tonight, -4, makes a lot of sense. The Nuggets host the Minnesota Timberwolves tonight. And, obviously Minnesota coming off a game where they were trying to fight everyone. Denver, to me, laying the 3, that would make a lot of sense. Women's Final Four is set. We're going to have Texas taking on South Carolina, UConn taking on UCLA, and I will stay with my prediction, sadly, that I had to adjust after Juju got hurt. That was my pick. That was my bet. USC gone. You knew that would be the case when Watkins ripped up her knee. UConn -150. UConn, you bets, and you bet we will. Best bets are brought to you by G-Bank, official bank of VSiN. G-Bank up in the all ante with a $750 bonus for new G-Bank Visa Signature Card customers. First new customers spend $1,000 on eligible purchases within 90 days from account opening. Receive a $250 bonus. In addition, if you spend $50,000 on gaming and sports app loads in the first 30 days of account opening, you're going to receive another $500 bonus, potentially $750 bonus. VSiN.com/GBank, VSiN.com/GBank. Subject to credit approval, terms and conditions apply. Who doesn't love torpedo bats? Best bet, we have been piping hot. Let's go to the graphic. Aaron Judge over 1.5 total bases. Love the torpedo bats, or in Judge's case, he's not using it. Take that, haters. Plus 100. Right after Make It Rain, it's Follow the Money. My guys Mitch and Paulie warming up in the bullpen. VSiN Managing Editor, the iconic Adam Burke, joins the show. Then it's VSiN Primetime, and then Cashing Out. Thanks to the guys in Vegas, our incredible producer, the great Mike Cohen. Sean showed up for work today. Talk to you mañana. Make it rain with Adam Schein.